There's a topic we're diving into today that has basically captivated human imagination for decades, but it just received a massive, highly classified update. Today, we're demystifying the sweeping 2026 UFO file release by the U.S. Department of War. And to truly understand why this massive document drop has sent absolute shockwaves through the intelligence community, we aren't going to start this explainer in some dusty archive. No, we're starting right in the middle of the action, with a startling 2023 encounter that kicked off this whole latest craze.
Picture this for a second. You are looking at sworn testimony from 2023. At an undisclosed location in America, two highly trained federal agents are just out on a routine evening operation. Then, suddenly, they spot something completely impossible in the sky. They described it as a round, ball-shaped object glowing in an orange color. And remember, these aren't amateur stargazers or internet conspiracy theorists. These are federal agents working for the U.S. government. They had absolutely zero idea what they were looking at, and after a short while, the object simply vanished. But, as you'll see, the mystery was literally just beginning.
Now, you might be thinking, okay, maybe it was an isolated glitch. But no. This anomaly quickly became an undeniable corroborated event. On day one, that first team sees the orb. The very next day, a completely different team spots the exact same glowing orange sphere in a different location. Within 2 days, a total of 6 trained officers across 3 separate teams all corroborated the sighting. But here's the kicker. They reported this large orange orb acting almost like a mothership, literally launching smaller red ball-shaped ships that zip forward, up, and down. This entire sequence even culminated in a stunning sequel in 2025, where a senior intelligence official actually chased a similar orb in a helicopter. When the chopper got close, the orb instantly jumped 20 miles away, moving so fast that the helicopter couldn't possibly track it.
So, because of escalating encounters exactly like the one we just covered, the U.S. Department of War did something unprecedented on May 8, 2026. They dropped 162 previously classified UFO files right onto a public webpage. We're talking FBI documents, Pentagon reports, NASA transcripts, and some completely never-before-seen videos. And embedded in these 162 files are over 400 strange cases that even the U.S. government officially admits it cannot fully explain.
To really give you a sense of why these files are so baffling, let's just compare 2 shocking incidents from the release. Over on the left, we have a 2023 incident in Greece. An object hovering right on the ocean's surface was captured on an infrared sensor, taking perfect 90-degree turns at 80 miles per hour. I mean, that completely defies our basic understanding of physics and inertia. There is no known earthly aircraft that can do that. Then, on the right, there's a 2013 U.S. incident featuring this massive 130 to 195-foot metallic ellipsoid. The sketch you'll find in the files isn't just some artist's imagination either. The FBI actually stated it's based on a real site photo.
But to really understand the context of today's files, we've got to take a quick step back and trace the history of flying saucers, from Mount Rainier all the way to Roswell.
The modern obsession literally all exploded in June 1947, when a pilot named Kenneth Arnold spotted 9 objects flying at twice the speed of any airplane of that era. Just weeks later in July, mysterious debris was found in Roswell, New Mexico, which basically sparked global hysteria. By 1952, these unexplained objects weren't just being seen by people on the ground, they were swarming Washington, D.C. and registering on official military radars. This panic got so intense that the U.S. government launched Project Blue Book, which went on to investigate over 12,000 sightings over the next 17 years.
Okay, I absolutely love sharing this next fact because it shows how easily pop culture can be manipulated. The term flying saucer, which practically defines the whole alien aesthetic for us, is actually based on a total misunderstanding. When Kenneth Arnold described his 1947 sighting, he never said the objects were shaped like saucers. He actually said they moved in the way a saucer would if you skipped it across the water. But the newspapers completely misquoted him, reporting their actual shape as saucers. And just like that, the iconic image of the alien spaceship was accidentally born into our global vocabulary.
Now, despite the massive media frenzy, the government's Project Blue Book did find perfectly mundane explanations for the vast majority of its 12,000 cases. Things like weather balloons, planets, or just conventional airplanes. But despite those explanations, there is one specific number that keeps this mystery alive, and that number is 701. Exactly 701 cases from that massive, decades-long investigation remained completely unidentified. And speaking of mysteries, let's shift our focus from Earth to the anomalies in outer space, specifically
those reported by our actual astronauts.
Bogey at 10 o'clock high. That is a direct quote from astronaut Frank Borman during the 1965 Gemini 7 spaceflight. Now, in military language, a bogey means an unidentified enemy aircraft or missile. It's a term strictly used on Earth during warfare. It makes absolutely zero sense to use that specific jargon in the total vacuum of outer space. Yet Borman used it to describe a distinct object trailing his craft, an object that ground control later confirmed was completely separate from his booster and debris.
The files also revealed that our historic trips to the moon were accompanied by some incredibly strange anomalies. Buzz Aldrin reported flashing lights and laser-like reflections during Apollo 11. Apollo 12 saw unusual particles and light flashes coming from their landing site. And perhaps most astonishingly, during Apollo 17 in 1972, 3 unexplained dots were captured in a distinct triangular formation right above the moon. What's crazy is that even recent preliminary analyses by the US government admits those dots could be physical objects. So what on Earth, or rather, what in space, were they?
All right, let's bring it back down to Earth and uncover the geographic pattern here, because there is a massive clue hidden right in plain sight.
If we look at the data, during the Cold War, UFO hotspots were primarily in the US, along the Soviet border, and in Germany. Fast forward to the modern 2020s era, and the hotspots are Iraq, Syria, and Japan. So what is the common denominator staring us right in the face? A heavy US military presence. It really forces us to ask a highly logical question. Why do supposed extraterrestrials almost exclusively hover around American military bases and monitoring systems? Well, the answer really comes down to public perception versus reality. For decades, the public believed the government was hiding alien spaceships in extraterrestrial bodies. But the declassified reality, which was finally revealed in 1994 and 1997, was that these UFOs were actually Project Mogul spy balloons used to monitor Soviet nuclear tests. And those alien bodies? They were literally test dummies used for aviation drops. The US government knowingly allowed the alien myth to spread like wildfire because it was the perfect cover-up. Think about it. If the public thinks it's aliens, they certainly aren't looking at highly classified Cold War espionage tech.
So when we systematically dismantle the recent sightings from this 2026 file drop, our earthly reality comes into sharp focus. Fast-moving anomalies in the Middle East, those are highly likely to be Iranian or Houthi drones caught on sophisticated US monitoring systems. That weird football-shaped object in Japan? Security analysts point directly to Chinese spy balloons, which we know for a fact exist, especially since one was shot down over the US in 2023. And that terrifying mothership launching red orbs we talked about at the very beginning of the explainer? Well, defense experts note that China has actively developed drone swarm technology that behaves exactly like that.
Which brings us to a major crossroads today. Is all this extraterrestrial, or is it just an earthly distraction? First, let's look at the definitive official findings. In February 2024, the government's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO, released their comprehensive report spanning investigations all the way from 1945 to 2023. Their conclusion basically burst the sci-fi bubble completely. They found zero evidence of extraterrestrial UFOs and absolutely zero evidence of the US reverse engineering alien technology. They officially concluded that most sightings are just ordinary objects: drones, weather balloons, spy planes, and planets.
But here's the million-dollar question. If the government knows these aren't aliens, why the sudden, dramatic file dump? Well, the source material outlines what's called the distraction theory, suggesting these files were released out of context specifically to fuel conspiracies and redirect public attention away from major political controversies, like the Epstein files. Now, we aren't taking any political sides here, but this theory perfectly illustrates a fundamental truth in intelligence. Mystery absolutely thrives where transparency is absent.
And that brings us to our final thought for today. With all these advanced military drones, high-altitude spy balloons, and literal political misdirection clouding our skies, we really have to ask ourselves, are we actually looking for aliens? Or are we just looking away from the truth that is right in front of us? It's a pretty fascinating question to ponder. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep seeking the truth, and I'll see you next time.